The train screeched to a halt, a cacophony of metal and urgency echoing through the dimly lit carriage. A sea of faces, young men clad in the olive drab of the United States Army, shifted uneasily. They were crammed together, caught in the liminal space between duty and uncertainty, all bound for the unknown. Outside, the world was a blur of smoke and chaos, the remnants of a war that had engulfed Europe now inching closer to American soil. In that fleeting moment, Private Samuel Sam Collins looked down at the metal tag hanging from his neck, his dog tag. The etched words, S. Collins, 423rd Infantry, felt like a lifeline, a reminder of his identity amidst the disorienting tide of conflict. But the reassuring weight of the tag was soon overshadowed by the grasp of foreboding. The train door swung open. Outside, a distant rumble of artillery punctuated the air, the ominous harbinger of what was to come. "Get off! Move!" The order pierced through the din, igniting a panic that spread like wildfire. The men surged forward, shoving and stumbling through the exit, some still clutching their gear, others leaving it behind. The thud of boots on the iron steps melded with the clamor of anxious voices, each man lost in his own thoughts, racing against time. In the fray, Sam turned back for a last glimpse of the train, a fleeting farewell to the fleeting safety it had offered. But as he did, the unthinkable happened. His dog tag slipped from his grasp, falling to the wooden platform beneath. He reached for it, but the momentum of the crowd pulled him away, dragging him towards the chaos that awaited. "Sam!" a voice called out, muffled by the noise and confusion. It was Corporal Jackson, a close friend, half yelling, half pulling at him. "We have to go, now!" A chilling realization struck him. He couldn't go back. The world around him fractured into innumerable pieces, a kaleidoscope of fear, courage, and impending doom. The dog tag, now lying alone on the train tracks, would become a haunting reminder of the man who never made it back from that evacuation. As the train pulled away, leaving behind the clamor of the station, the last echoes of Sam's laughter faded into the distance, swallowed by the weight of war. The mystery of his fate clung to the air like smoke, an unanswered question. What had happened to him in the chaos of that moment? Decades later, this question remains, tied to that lost dog tag on the rails, a desperate search for closure and truth, still lingering in the shadows of history. The urgency to uncover the past mounts, an emotional tether pulling at the heartstrings of descendants searching for answers in the ruins left behind. Private Samuel Sam Collins, a wiry young man with tousled chestnut hair and bright green eyes, had always felt a pull towards duty, a sense of belonging to something greater than himself. He was born and raised in a small town in Wisconsin, where life moved slowly and the air was rich with the scent of pine and freshly baked bread. His father, a veteran of the Great War, had instilled in him a deep respect for service and sacrifice, often sharing stories of camaraderie and valor while seated on their porch, the evening sun casting long shadows across the yard. As Sam took a deep breath in the cramped confines of the train, memories of home flooded his mind. He could almost hear his mother's soft voice, urging him to take care, and see his father's proud yet worried gaze as he waved goodbye at the train station. It was the summer of 1940, and while the world was engulfed in a raging storm of conflict abroad, Sam felt the weight of history pressing upon him. He was just 22, but the camaraderie around him made him feel far older. Each man beside him was not just a soldier. They were brothers knit together by the threads of fate and fear, ready to face the unknown. Sam's dog tag, a small piece of metal stamped with his name, serial number, and blood type, dangled from a chain around his neck, a constant reminder of his identity. He ran his fingers over the cold surface, feeling the letters engraved into the metal. Sam Collins, 123-45-6789B+. It was a stark contrast to the warmth of the memories he cherished. It symbolized his duty, yet it also represented an inescapable reality. Every soldier carried within him the potential for sacrifice. As the train lurched into motion, Sam found himself staring out of the window, watching the countryside blur past him, a patchwork of green fields and distant hills. The sun began to dip below the horizon, casting an orange glow that illuminated the faces of his fellow soldiers. Sam could see the mixture of hope and trepidation etched upon their features. Each man was navigating his own thoughts, grappling with the magnitude of what they were about to face. Some shared nervous laughter while others remained silent, lost in contemplation. Among them was Corporal James "Jimmy" Parker, Sam's closest friend since their days in boot camp. Jimmy had a knack for lightening the mood, his infectious grin breaking through the heavy atmosphere. "Hey, Sam, you ever think we might just be on an extended summer trip?" he quipped. Laughter erupted around them, a brief respite from the impending storm. Sam chuckled along, though deep down he knew that this was no vacation. The train rattled through a tunnel, plunging them into darkness. For a moment, the only sound was the rhythmic clattering of wheels on steel tracks, as if the train itself were whispering secrets of the past. Sam closed his eyes, imagining the world outside, the sounds of war echoing in the distance, the cries of those who had already fought and fallen. It was a stark contrast to the serene life he had left behind. As the train emerged from the tunnel, the view changed drastically. The sky darkened, heavy clouds gathering ominously overhead, mirroring the storm brewing within him. The smell of damp earth and impending rain seeped through the windows, and he could almost taste the tension in the air. Each passing moment felt like a countdown, and Sam's heart raced with both fear and determination. He was ready to face whatever lay ahead, even if it meant stepping into the chaos of war. The train continued its journey, and as it approached the next station, a sense of urgency enveloped the carriage. The reality of their mission loomed large, and the weight of his dog tag felt heavier than ever. It was not just a piece of metal, it was a promise to himself, to his family, and to those who had come before him. Sam resolved to return home, not just as a soldier, but as a survivor. Little did he know, that journey would lead him into the heart of darkness, where the line between valor and tragedy would blur, leaving behind questions that echoed through the generations. The afternoon sun hung low in the sky, casting an orange glow across the desolate landscape as Private Samuel Collins stood among his fellow soldiers. They were gathered on the outskirts of the railway station in Dunkirk, France, a place that would soon be etched in history as a site of both desperation and valor. The air was thick with tension, the distant rumble of artillery mingling with the cries of men and the whir of aircraft overhead, a relentless reminder of the chaos that surrounded them. On that fateful day, May 26, 1940, Sam was just another cog in the vast machinery of war, but he felt the weight of it heavier than most. He was acutely aware of the urgency in the air, the looming threat of annihilation as German forces pressed in from all sides. His heart raced as he watched the evacuation efforts unfold, the makeshift pier lined with soldiers, some young, some old, all sharing a singular hope: to make it back home. He glanced at the men beside him, their faces etched with fatigue and fear. Among them was Sergeant Robert Jenkins, a seasoned soldier who had become a mentor to Sam. "Stick close, Sam," Jenkins said, his voice steady despite the unrest. "We'll get through this together. Just hold tight." As the minutes ticked by, the cacophony of war morphed into a haunting symphony, the whistle of the trains blending with the crackling sound of gunfire, the cries of wounded men echoing through the air. Time seemed to blur, and Sam's mind raced with thoughts of home, his family awaiting his return. He could almost hear his father's voice reminding him of the importance of resilience, of duty. Suddenly, a shout pierced through the chaos, breaking Sam's reverie. "Get to the train! Now!" The urgency in the sergeant's voice was unmistakable. In an instant, the soldiers scrambled forward, pushing through the throngs of men desperate to escape. Sam's heart sank as he felt the surge of panic ripple through the crowd. Bodies pressed against him, shoving him toward the train that awaited them, an iron lifeline amidst the turmoil. The steam billowed from the engine as the soldiers boarded hastily, their faces a mixture of relief and dread. Sam found himself wedged between two men, one of whom was clutching a small photograph of his family. Sam's gaze flicked to the exterior of the train. The rust-stained metal bore the scars of shrapnel and bullets, a testament to the battles fought and lives lost. As the whistle blew, the train lurched forward, a jolting motion that sent Sam's heart racing. They were moving, but the feeling of safety felt fleeting. Suddenly, the train shuddered violently, as if caught in the grip of a beast. Sam's stomach dropped. The engine roared as it continued to push forward, but the sound of distant explosions punctuated the air, growing nearer with each passing moment. "Hold on!" Jenkins shouted over the din, trying to rally the men's spirits as fear gripped them. But before Sam could catch his breath, the train screeched to a halt, the force throwing him against the wall. A cacophony of shouts erupted from outside as soldiers and civilians alike sensed the impending doom. In that moment of chaos, Sam glanced down to his dog tag, the cold metal resting against his chest. It was a small piece of home, a reminder of who he was and what he was fighting for. He could hear the thunderous sounds of battle drawing closer, the echoes of the past crashing into the present. Fear surged through him, but it was quickly followed by a fierce determination to survive. Without warning, the sound of explosions erupted around them and panic ensued. The train jolted again, this time a violent tremor that seemed to shake the very ground beneath them. In a split second, the cabin was filled with dust and debris as another shell struck nearby. The darkness enveloped the soldiers, the air thick with the acrid smell of smoke and terror. As the dust settled, Sam found himself gasping for breath, struggling to comprehend the chaos that had unfolded. He looked around, his heart pounding as he searched for Jenkins. But the sergeant was nowhere to be found, vanished into the shadows of the wreckage. In that moment, time froze. The sounds of battle faded into the background, replaced by an eerie silence punctuated only by the distant cries of men. Sam's heart sank as the reality dawned on him. He was alone. His instincts kicked in. He needed to regroup, to find a way to survive. But as he stumbled toward the door, he felt something slip from his grasp. A single dog tag, his own, clattering to the ground as he pushed through the debris. It lay there behind the rails, a testament to a life interrupted. A young man who had vanished into the annals of history, leaving nothing but a trace of his existence. Search for his comrades. Sam's heart raced with a mix of dread and determination. The panic was palpable as soldiers rushed past him, clutching whatever belongings they could carry. The order to evacuate was given, but chaos reigned. The sound of bombs falling nearby echoed in his ears, each explosion resonating with the fear that perhaps he would not make it home after all. In the days that followed, as the evacuation train pulled away from Dunkirk, Sam's absence was noted by his family. They were left with the haunting uncertainty of his fate. Samuel's mother, Margaret Collins, sat at the kitchen table clutching her son's dog tag, an unmistakable metal square inscribed with his name and service number. To her, it was a symbol of hope, a connection to him that she refused to relinquish. Meanwhile, in the aftermath of the evacuation, the search for Samuel began. The British military initiated an investigation into the missing soldiers, sending out teams to canvass the war-torn landscape. They interviewed survivors, piecing together fragmented accounts of what had transpired. However, as the weeks turned into months, the trail grew cold. Reports of soldiers with similar names flooded in, but none could confirm Samuel's fate. In the town of Dunkirk, where the echoes of battle still reverberated, townsfolk spoke of strange sightings, figures in tattered uniforms, wandering the shores, lost and forgotten. But each lead led to a dead end, and frustration mounted. Margaret found herself trapped in a web of bureaucracy, navigating the labyrinth of military records and red tape. Every letter she wrote to the War Office seemed to disappear into a void, leaving her bereft of answers. Time passed, but hope refused to fade. Margaret kept an album of Samuel's photographs, meticulously labeled with dates and locations. She filled the pages with memories, holding on to every detail of his life before the war, the laughter, the dreams, the boy who had promised to return home. The local newspaper ran a feature on the missing man, but even that provided no clarity, only shadows of uncertainty. As the seasons changed, the emotional toll mounted. Family gatherings were marked by unspoken grief as relatives shifted their focus to the war effort. Samuel's younger sister, Clara, often asked about him, her innocent questions stinging Margaret's heart. "When is Sam coming home?" she would say, her eyes wide with the hope that only a child could possess. Each time, Margaret would offer a gentle smile, masking the turmoil within. Desperation led Margaret to seek the help of a local journalist, Albert Fisher. He had a reputation for uncovering stories buried beneath layers of wartime propaganda. Albert and Margaret met in a small cafe, dimly lit and filled with the scent of brewed coffee. There, she poured her heart out, revealing every detail she had gathered, every lead she had followed. "Mrs. Collins," Albert said, his brow furrowed with concern as he took notes. "The military is not the only place to look. Perhaps local fishermen or civilians might have seen something." Inspired, she agreed to seek out the men who had ferried troops from the beaches, those who had witnessed the chaos unfold. Weeks later, Margaret found herself at the docks, speaking with weathered fishermen who recounted harrowing tales of the evacuation. One elder, a grizzled man named Ernest, recounted seeing a soldier fall as the last train pulled away. "He was there one moment, then gone," he said, a haunted look in his eyes. "It was chaos. I wish I could have done more." But as each clue unraveled, the threads of hope began to fray. A witness claimed to remember a soldier resembling Samuel, but the details were hazy. Another lead pointed to a nearby village where a survivor was reported to have been taken for treatment. It all felt like grasping at shadows. "Do you believe the truth will ever come to light?" Margaret whispered to Albert one evening as they walked along the shore, the waves crashing against the rocks. Albert paused, gazing out at the horizon. "I believe it's out there waiting to be found. We just need to keep looking." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows on the beach, Margaret felt an ember of hope ignite within her. But the question remained, how much longer could she endure the uncertainty? Do you believe that the truth always finds a way to surface? Comment below before you discover what unfolds next in this painful yet essential journey. The year was 2022 when Ethan Collins, a history professor in his late 30s, stumbled upon a box of his late grandfather's belongings while cleaning out his childhood home in Massachusetts. The box was unremarkable, its brown cardboard edges frayed and stained with age. But what lay inside would change everything he thought he knew about his family history. Amidst letters, photographs, and a worn leather wallet, a small, tarnished dog tag caught his eye. He recognized the name immediately: Samuel Collins, his grandfather, who had vanished during the chaotic evacuation at Dunkirk in 1940. Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine as he turned the tag over in his hand. The engraved details of his grandfather's military identification were clear, but it was the date inscribed on the back that piqued his curiosity: May 26, 1940. Memories of his grandmother's whispered stories about Samuel, the soldier who never came home, flooded his mind. This piece of metal had endured decades of silence and loss. What had happened to Samuel? The mystery started to unfurl. Driven by a mix of nostalgia and an academic's thirst for truth, Ethan dove into research about the Dunkirk evacuation. He devoted evenings to poring over archives, scouring military records, and combing through old newspaper articles. Each piece of information he uncovered painted a picture of the evacuation, a meticulous operation marred by confusion and fear. Hundreds of thousands of men were stranded, waiting for rescue as the enemy advanced. Yet, among these grand narratives, the personal stories often remained untold. The breakthrough came unexpectedly when Ethan accessed a digitized database of military dispatches. In the cramped file of the Royal Army, he found a brief mention of a Private Samuel Collins, reported missing in action during the evacuation. His heart raced as he read the accompanying notes. Last seen boarding a train. Dog tag recovered from the site. It was a small detail, yet it felt monumental. Here was a breadcrumb leading him closer to his grandfather's fate. With renewed determination, Ethan decided to travel to Dunkirk. Standing at the very spot where Samuel had once stood, the salty breeze ruffling his hair, Ethan felt an overwhelming connection to the past. The remnants of the station were a ghostly reminder of the turmoil that had unfolded there. He could almost hear the echoes of desperate men and the thunder of engines, see the nightmare of missed trains and the frantic shouts of soldiers trying to escape. Ethan sought out the local historian, Madame Lemoine, who had dedicated her life to preserving the stories of Dunkirk. Her office was filled with maps, photographs, and artifacts from the evacuation. When Ethan presented the dog tag and his grandfather's name, her eyes sparkled with recognition. Ah, yes, Samuel Collins. He was part of a unit that faced intense enemy fire. They were to board the last train, but chaos reigned. Many were lost in the confusion, she explained. As she spoke, she pulled out a faded document from her files. It was a transport list from that fateful day. Ethan's heart raced as he searched through the names, hoping to find one more detail that could lead him closer to understanding his grandfather's disappearance. And then, it happened. There, among the scrawled ink, was Samuel's name, followed by the words, "Missing, presumed dead." The weight of those words hit Ethan like a physical blow. He had hoped for something more, a glimmer of hope that his grandfather had somehow made it out alive. Instead, he was left with the stark reality of loss, magnified by the passage of time. Yet, amidst the sorrow, there was also a resolve blooming within him. Samuel's legacy was real, and it wasn't just about loss. It was about courage and the struggles of those who fought. As he stood in the historian's office, the late afternoon sun streaming through the window, Ethan made a decision. He would not only honor his grandfather's memory, but also give voice to the countless others who shared the same fate. He envisioned a book, a collection of stories from those who lived through the Dunkirk evacuation, a testament to resilience in the face of unimaginable odds. The dog tag, once a mere relic, had become a beacon, guiding him toward understanding, preservation, and remembrance. Samuel Collins might have been lost to the world, but through Ethan's efforts, his story would finally be told. The discovery of the old dust-laden photo, crumpled at the edges, seemed to awaken a long-forgotten anguish. The faded image revealed Private Samuel Collins and a group of young men, their faces infused with determination against the backdrop of a harrowing landscape. The date scribbled on the back, May 26, 1940, sent a shiver through the spine of his grandson, Mark. Each time he stared at the photograph, he felt closer to the grandfather he had never met, yet whose absence had cast a shadow over his family for generations. What intrigued Mark most about the photo was an inscription beneath the image, cryptically stating, "For those we leave behind." This phrase haunted him, prompting a deeper investigation into that fateful day. It was a time when chaos reigned, and lives were exchanged for mere survival. Desperate souls clinging to the hope of evacuation as the enemy advanced like a relentless tide. Intrigued, Mark sought out the records of the Dunkirk evacuation, specifically focusing on the 2nd Battalion of the Royal Warwickshire Regiment, to which his grandfather belonged. As he sifted through dusty archives and yellowed pages, he began to piece together the events that unfolded on that critical day. Tens of thousands had assembled at the harbor, waiting for their turn to escape while the skies erupted with the constant threat of enemy fire. Mark imagined the smell of smoke, the sound of distant explosions, the chilling cries of men fleeing a storm of bullets, and the wave of fear that must have cascaded through the ranks. Reports indicated that during the evacuation, Private Collins had been part of a group assigned to provide cover for other soldiers boarding the evacuation trains. The objective was clear: hold the line while the others escaped. Yet, as the evening approached, the strain of battle began to wear on him. Mark could almost envision his grandfather's weary eyes scanning the horizon, the sound of the train whistle beckoning them toward safety. Yet the grim reality of their situation gnawed at him. One particular moment stood out in Mark's research. As the trains prepared to leave, chaos erupted when a nearby air raid caused panic among the troops. In the ensuing confusion, soldiers were forced to make a split-second decision: stay and fight, or abandon their posts for a chance at survival. It was noted that Sam had directed his fellow men toward safety, shouting orders amid the cacophony. But in doing so, he inadvertently became separated from his unit. In those brief, chaotic moments, time felt distorted. Private Collins had rushed toward the train, the urgency of escape overwhelming any rational thought. He felt the rattle of the iron tracks beneath his feet, the jarring reality of war reverberating in his bones. But before he could reach the safety of the train, the ground shook violently as an enemy bomb detonated nearby, sending debris flying and scattering soldiers in every direction. In that split second, everything changed. Mark's heart raced as he read the accounts of a soldier who had been near Sam during those final moments. The soldier had recounted how he saw Collins stumble amid the chaos, his dog tag glinting in the fading light as it slipped from his neck, falling among the twisted metal and shattered wood of the railway track. That tag, a small piece of metal carrying his identity, symbolized the hope of returning home. But it ultimately became a silent witness to the tragedy that followed. The train departed, carrying away hundreds of men, leaving behind those who had fallen, those who had been lost in the fray. Mark felt a deep sorrow as he imagined his grandfather's fate. He had fought valiantly, but had never made it to those fated carriages. The weight of this revelation bore down upon him, a mix of pride and grief intertwining within his heart. Sam had given his all, but it was the cruel nature of war that had turned hope into despair. As Mark continued to delve into the archives, he realized that while the world moved on, the memory of Private Samuel Collins had not vanished. It remained etched in the minds of those who had witnessed the bravery of men like him. The truth had emerged from the shadows, unveiling a story of sacrifice and courage that transcended time, reminding Mark and his family that the past is never truly lost. It simply waits to be rediscovered. The discovery of Private Samuel Collins's dog tag, unearthed from the very tracks where he had vanished 70 years prior, reverberated through his family like a thunderclap in the stillness of history. As the sun set over the Collins family home in suburban New Jersey, a profound sense of closure began to envelop them. The find was not just a piece of metal. It was a lifeline thrown back into the past, a bridge connecting generations, and a tangible emblem of sacrifice. In the weeks following the discovery, Samuel's grandson David Collins became an unwitting historian. Armed with his grandfather's dog tag and a newfound determination, he dove into the archives, scouring every document he could find on the evacuation of Dunkirk. Each page unveiled more about the chaotic retreat, the desperate scramble of troops, and the heartbreaking accounts of those who were left behind. David learned of the harrowing conditions the soldiers faced, the overwhelming odds against them, and how many, like his grandfather, were lost to the sea or the advancing enemy. The emotional weight of this quest was not lost on David. As he flipped through yellowed pages of history, he felt the specter of his grandfather watching over him, urging him to uncover the truth. With each revelation, he imagined the fear and bravery coursing through Samuel on that fateful day. The dog tag revealed not only a name but a story, the story of a young man who had enlisted with dreams of adventure, only to be caught in the maelstrom of war. Samuel's story did not end with the discovery of the tag. Inspired by the findings, David organized a small memorial ceremony at the very site of the railway station in Dunkirk, where his grandfather had last stood, a sacred ground marked by the struggles of countless men. On that chilly afternoon, surrounded by family and local historians, he shared the tale of Samuel, the young soldier who had fought bravely. He spoke of how his heart had remained tethered to his family, even in the chaos of war. As family members placed candles along the remnants of the old tracks, silence fell, interrupted only by the distant sound of waves crashing against the shore. In that moment, David understood the power of remembrance. Each flickering flame represented a story, a life, a sacrifice. The act of honoring those lost at Dunkirk was not merely about Samuel, but about the collective memory of all who had endured the horrors of war. The ceremony garnered local media attention, and soon, the Collins family was invited to share Samuel's story at various events, including a historical symposium on World War II. David found himself standing before audiences, recounting the threads of his grandfather's life, intertwining it with the broader narrative of hope and resilience in the face of adversity. The dog tag, a seemingly unremarkable object, transformed into a powerful symbol of the human spirit. Months later, the culmination of their efforts became tangible. The Collins family collaborated with local historians to create a small exhibit in Dunkirk dedicated to soldiers like Samuel. It was a humble but poignant display, featuring photographs, personal letters, and artifacts from the evacuation. Visitors walked through the exhibit and paused before Samuel's dog tag, reflecting on the cost of freedom. As David watched families, students, and veterans explore the exhibit, he felt a swell of pride. The story of his grandfather had transcended time, connecting with a new generation. The dog tag had become more than just a relic. It was a reminder of the sacrifices made for the sake of liberty and peace. In the years that followed, Samuel Collins was no longer a forgotten soldier, but a cherished figure in the history of Dunkirk. The narrative of his bravery flourished, ensuring that his legacy would endure well beyond the confines of his family's memory. David often returned to the tracks where it all began, standing in the same spot where Samuel had stood, reflecting on the journey that had brought him there. The echoes of history whispered through the air, a reminder that the past is never truly lost. It lives on in the stories we choose to tell and remember. For the Collins family and all those who came to know Samuel's tale, the dog tag had not simply stayed behind the rails. It had become a vessel for remembrance, a testament to the enduring human spirit in the face of overwhelming odds. As dusk settled over the small town of Maplewood, where Samuel Collins had once envisioned a future filled with promise and peace, the echoes of a long-lost chapter began to find their place in history. The findings of the recent investigation had not only shed light on the fate of Private Collins, but had also rekindled the memories of those who had loved and lost him. The fragile strands of the past, long buried beneath the weight of time and silence, were finally being woven into a narrative that honored his sacrifice. The Collins family gathered in the quiet living room of their ancestral home, walls adorned with sepia-toned photographs that captured fleeting moments of joy amid a world ravaged by war. The air hung heavy with anticipation as Samuel's grandson, Michael, prepared to share the full account of his grandfather's life and disappearance. Armed with new information and a heart full of gratitude, Michael stood before his family, ready to honor the man whose dog tag had remained a haunting reminder of his absence. "We've spent years wondering what happened to him," Michael began, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. "Today, I stand here not just to recount his story, but to celebrate the man he was. Private Samuel Collins was more than just a name on a list of missing soldiers. He was a brother, a friend, and a hero." As he spoke, Michael unfolded the details of the investigation, the discoveries of old documents, testimonies from surviving witnesses, and even the long-lost dog tag itself, which had been unearthed from the very rails where it had fallen during the tumultuous evacuation. Each revelation painted a vivid picture of a brave soldier caught in the maelstrom of war, fighting not only for his life, but for the lives of those around him. "The dog tag," Michael continued, holding it up for all to see, "is a symbol of his courage and resilience. It reminds us that while he may have been left behind, his spirit never faltered. He was a part of something greater than himself, and we owe it to him to ensure that his story lives on." The family listened intently, tears shimmering in their eyes as they absorbed the weight of Michael's words. They could almost feel the presence of Samuel in the room, a specter of hope and valor that transcended the years. The pain of loss had not entirely vanished, but it was now tempered by a sense of closure. They had finally unearthed the truth, and with it, a renewed appreciation for the sacrifices made by so many during that dark chapter of history. The evening unfolded with an air of reverence as family members began to share their own stories and memories of Samuel. They recalled his laughter, his unwavering kindness, and the dreams he had harbored before the war swept him away. Each tale became a thread, binding them together in a tapestry of love and remembrance. As the night deepened, Michael took a moment to reflect on what this journey of discovery had meant to him personally. "I never knew my grandfather," he confessed, his voice thick with emotion. "But through this process, I've come to understand not just his story, but the stories of countless others like him. Soldiers who fought bravely and disappeared, leaving behind families who desperately sought answers. This is for them too." In that quiet living room, the weight of history transformed into a beacon of hope. The Collins family would carry Samuel's legacy forward, not only as a soldier lost to the fog of war, but as a cherished ancestor whose life had meaning and purpose. As the final moments of the evening slipped away, Michael issued a gentle call to action, one that resonated with the importance of remembrance and the stories that deserve to be told. For those of you watching this, if you believe that every memory matters, that every story deserves to be remembered, please share this journey. Let's ensure that the sacrifices of heroes like my grandfather are never forgotten. In that moment, the room glowed not just with the warmth of family, but with the understanding that while the past may hold shadows, it can also illuminate the path forward. In the hearts of those who love and remember, stories endure, echoing from the depths of history into tomorrow.